Strong Toyota, leading the way every day. And strong Toyota, symbols of trust.
Attorney Roland Mantanonio, who represents the governor of Guam in a limited capacity, is pushing to obtain funds the government needs to pay former Luzon landowners from 2009 Section 30 bond money, about $28 million worth. That amount is how much Gov Guam was ordered to pay the landowners in a Superior Court decision made last December. However, solid waste receivers Gershman, Brickner, and Bratton Principal Associate David Manning disagrees, arguing that doing so would severely impact GBB's ability to complete its projects outlined in the consent decree. GBB was in federal court today through telephone conference to present its quarterly progress report. It is the receiver's position that our responsibility is to the District Court of Guam and that we cannot release any funds for any purpose not directly related to the orders of the court, Manning stated in court. In fact, he points out that the District Court had already stated in its order that the costs of the final closure of the ORDOT dump are still uncertain. Therefore, it is imperative that the bond proceeds remain available for the final closure. The governor's office, however, believes that paying off the Luzon landowners is the responsibility of the federal receiver, quote, because siting of the landfill implicates acquisition of the real property necessary to host the landfill. It is clear that acquisition is one of the consent decree responsibilities that are charged to the federal receiver. In response to that argument, however, Manning says it's wrong to impose this responsibility on the receiver because the site was chosen by the government of Guam and accepted by the court well before its decision to appoint a receiver. Manning adds that Gov Guam condemned the Luzon land about 2 months before the district court appointed a federal receiver to oversee the Guam Solid Waste Authority. The debate over who is responsible to pay the Luzon landowners gets even more intense when the government contends that GBB had previously acknowledged that the land in question is an unpaid capital cost of compliance that requires funding. But Manning counters that GBB had always understood that the landowners had already been fully compensated. But the governor's office states that it simply cannot afford to pay $28 million to the landowners, nor can it finance or borrow money because it is already very close to its debt ceiling. Further, they state that Section 30 bonds is the only immediate source of funding to fulfill its obligation to the Luzon landowners. Manning notes that Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio, who has been communicating with his office through letters over the last several months, suggested that the federal receivers seek federal grants to pay for the closure of ORDOT dump, but Manning reminded Chief Judge Tydinko Gatewood that GBB had already assisted the governor's office in obtaining $103.5 million in loans and grants, quote, only to have the government of Guam withdraw its request for federal funding at the last minute. Any future attempts, Manning adds, may be futile given its history. Manning warned that any challenges the governor's office makes against GBB to pay the Luzon landowners will not only seriously delay the ORDOT dump closure, but it will force them to ask the district court to intervene with an order giving them full access to Section 30 bond funds.